Heavenly Father, grant that we who would seek to serve you may have the wisdom of your Spirit, the guiding of your hand, and the grace to serve together for the prosperity of our city through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. National Anthem. Australia. Please be seated. Leave of absence, nil. We'll go to item 3, condolences. I go firstly to Councillor Tozer.
And her family on the passing of Yvonne Wiggett.
Seconder, Councillor Mark Hamill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yvonne Wiggett was a much-loved member of our Mudgebar community, and there was a rare day that she couldn't be found at the Mudgebar Market Shopping Centre talking with her mates about the issues of Mudgebar and what can be done to fix them. I'm sure that's similar to many communities who have got these iconic figures in their communities that just kind of always are involved in everyday life. Yvonne will be sorely missed. She was well known. She was called the Mayoress of Mudgebar. She was the wife of a serviceman and was heavily involved in the Mudgebar-Robina sub-branch of the RSL, and she will be missed in our community.
That's it. Councillor, I put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. Go back to Councillor Tozer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It has been a sad fortnight for our community, and I'd move that a motion of condolence be passed and a message of sympathy be forwarded to Denise O'Brien on the recent passing of her husband, George O'Brien, OAM.
Second, Councillor Castro.
Mr. Mayor, George was quite a significant icon of our local area, and I would love to read just a few words about his contribution to our community, given how substantial that contribution was. George was a giant of our area, a true gentleman, a man not just of uplifting and helpful words, but a man of action, who got his hands dirty and heartbroken at times like all leaders as he served others to make our community better. I know George will reflect positively on that occasional heartbreak and that it was worth it for the wonderful successes that peppered George's contribution to our community over so many years. George was a much-loved principal at Mudgebar State School. Others will tell stories of that firsthand, as students or parents, but my recollection was the comments made to me by strangers, filled with love as people regularly reflected on his contribution in their lives, sometimes surprised that George even remembered their names often many years after graduation had passed. As a school teacher and education leader, George transformed lives and provided a lasting legacy to our community. George was also a committed member of the Lions Club for over 50 years and quite a few decades here in Mudgebar. He was involved in countless initiatives of that club, and I remember being regaled as a newly signed up Lion myself of many of the projects that he had led or participated in. But perhaps the most memorable to me and many Lions of Mudgebar was the words of the songs he wrote. It's not known to many, but Mudgebar Lions is a singing club, and their songbook is full of words of old standards with adjusted kind of words edifying and lifting up members who had reached membership milestones or achieved something wonderful, or just words about the uniqueness of the Mudgebar area. George was a poet, and his poetry lifted the whole community up when he recited his own work or when he recited that of a contemporary. George's poetry provided a lasting legacy to our community. George was also a musician. He participated, like many musicians from the local area, he participated in the Hinterland Community Band as a member of the horn section, attending many events near and far at places like the Mudgebar Show, at the Anzac Day service, or the Mudgebar Street Party, or just in the village or the hall when the band got scheduled to play. But George did more than that. He trained the next generation of bugler and young people were tutored by him to play the last post, and now they stand proudly on those special days where George used to stand. George's love of music provided a lasting legacy to our community. George was a patron of the Mudgebar Show, respected for his long service, volunteering and leading groups of other volunteers, contributing selflessly to make the show the wonderful community agricultural event it is today. He did much of the same with the Gold Coast Hinterland Heritage Museum, serving as a volunteer there regularly and helping out whenever there was a need. He also helped design and project manage the War Memorial at Elsie Laver Park, and I recall a number of times when he explained to me how the cenotaph had been positioned for optimum impact, shadowing the afternoon light such that it fell on the memorial wall perfectly. George's volunteering and commitment to our sense of place and history in Mudgebar provided a lasting legacy to our community. George also led the traditions of honour and respect for former councillor John Franklin, who tragically died in a wood chopping accident in the same week that the Mudgebar Memorial Hall burnt down. Championing the rebuilding of the hall and championing the memory of John Franklin wasn't just words, though, for George. He helped raise money to rebuild the hall, rallying the whole community around the cause, and for many years he chaired the John Franklin Fellowship Committee, who have been responsible for tens of thousands of dollars in bursaries provided to young leaders of our area. George's commitment to remembering others' legacy and the next generation has provided a lasting cultural legacy to our community. There were countless little moments that mattered. Many of our community will probably have one or many, but when we want to remember him, we need not go far. George O'Brien OAM will be the first person laid to rest in the expanded Mudgebar Cemetery on the new Acacia lawn. It is fitting that he be the first to be laid there, and I'm sure he'll set the tone for the new facility and make sure everyone who comes after him behaves. But hopefully, whenever we visit, we'll remember his welcoming smile, perhaps hear his articulate voice reciting a poem he loved, or that he thought would entertain us, like the one that helps us remember how to spell Mudgebar, M-U-D-G-E-E-R-A-B-A, Mudgebar. Maybe when we visit, we'll hear his familiar horn play Sunset or The Last Post. I know that whenever I visit, I'll remember his kind but firm words to me about courage and community leadership, remembering that even when it's hard or challenging, keeping focused on the best outcome for the established community values is the best path to the rewarding satisfaction that comes from a job well done. George, I'll miss you, and the community will miss you. In the apt words of Joan Rudd, when I spoke to her this week, George was a 1 in a million, and we wish there was more like him. We're heartbroken that George has left in a season that's been so hard with the cyclone and all, but I know that George would empower us to remember his legacy by working to make the community as caring and loving as he made it during his time with us. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor, I put to the vote. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. Could you please add Councillor Gates, Councillor Young? No. Councillor Castro, Councillor Doran. Right. Next condolences, Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that a motion of condolence be passed and a message of sympathy sent to the family of Jenny Alcorn.
Second,
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Jenny Alcorn was a close friend to many and a champion in many ways. She was a world champion athlete who gave so much to the Gold Coast triathlon community. She was a world professional duathlon champion in 1992, world Ironman champion in the 55 to 59 age group in 2016, and the world cross-X champion in the same year. An absolutely amazing woman whose encouragement and infectious laugh will be remembered by all in the triathlon community, and she'll also be very well remembered as a person who touched many, many lives. We send our sympathy to Margot, Jenny's partner of 20 years, and may Jenny rest in peace.
Councillor, motion. You want to speak, Councillor Kurtz?
Please be added.
Okay, be added that, and Councillor Marshall to be added. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. Okay, we move on to the next item, Mayoral Minute. There's 4 today. Councillors, I won't read the preamble because some of the minutes are self-explanatory and quite long enough. First one, councillors, that are moved to support the city's recovery for ex-tropical cyclone Alfred and its impact on our city's residents and businesses, that the following incentives and industry support programs be established. A $2 million tourist attraction fund administered by Experienced Gold Coast, intended to increase tourism demand and promote the Gold Coast tourism market. B, $500,000 investment fund administered by Invest Gold Coast and intended to build business resilient and incentives post-recovery investment activities in the city. C, a $500,000 fund administered by the city administration and available by application to the working group outlined below to implement incentives and programs that will deliver accelerated recovery benefits to the city's key sector. 2, that the $3 million in program funding outlined in 1A to C above be funded by savings achieved in the March budget review. B, be made available immediately to ensure timely relief and support for the city's residents and businesses. 3, that the Chief Executive Officer convene a working group to oversee the establishment, implementation and overall effectiveness of the programs outlined at 1A to C above, comprising of the following ex officio members: the CEO, myself, CEO Invest, CEO Experience, CEO Brand. 4, that an acquittal report be presented to Council by working group members by no later than September 2025, outlining the programs delivered by Council and its control entities through this initiative and the associated outcomes and benefit that has been achieved for the city. Anyone got questions you want to ask about that? Councillor Peter Young.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. What a wonderful initiative, and I'm just so proud of the fact that we're able to pursue these kind of objectives, and thank you for introducing this to us. I just wondered if the CEO might be able to provide us in the near future documentation about how this is going to run, so if we have inquiries we know how to direct people appropriately. Thank you.
Yes, he will be.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone speak against? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really value the intent and sentiment of this, but my concern is that this really should be business as usual for Experience Gold Coast and Invest Gold Coast. And I'm very concerned about allocating more millions of dollars to Experience Gold Coast at this time. I do think that our ratepayers would be interested in seeing us, rather than allocating additional funding where they already have funding for tourism attraction, to things a little bit more local and closer to home. So for those reasons, I won't be supporting it today, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Just on that, the funding that's been allocated rightfully has been engaged in signing up future events, because you've got to do contractual and letting of events in our city well in advance, otherwise you can't get events here. So those funds are committed. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question, if you'll permit.
Yeah.
So just on the $500,000 investment fund and the $500,000 additional fund, I was wondering if you could outline your vision as to what that might look like in terms of what business support might be available and some examples.
Okay, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, councillors, this Invest Gold Coast engaged Deloitte to provide some high-level analysis around what would be required. So what is in the Mayoral Minute is consistent with the Deloitte report, which basically recommended $2 million to Experience for marketing and attraction, $500,000 to Invest, and then a $500, if you like, contestable amount, which would be a project designed by all three. In terms of what exactly will be as part of the investment fund, what Deloitte have recommended is that Experience get on and do their marketing, because what we're seeing is that the majority of the impact is on the tourism industry at the moment, that we let that run for a period of time, and then we design a series of specific initiatives on any areas that
of the economy that have missed out as a result of that uplift, hopefully we see from tourism. So at this stage, it is a estimate of what the amount is, and then it will be very industry specific, Councillor, depending on where the likely impact is going to be. So what we're not proposing to do is bore a sort of a broad brush approach like we did after the Christmas Day storm events. Instead, we're proposing that Invest hold this money. We see how well the Tourism Attraction Fund works, and if there are any gaps, then Invest would step in and they would look to invest in those areas where there's gaps.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following that, that's raised a question for me. I wasn't aware that there had been a independent consultancy report done on this. I was wondering if, through you to the CEO, first of all, if we could understand the scope of that work. Was it, how broad did it go in terms of supporting our city? And also, is there, I'm curious if there was recommendations. Why, I appreciate it's in the form of a Mayoral Minute, but why would that not be presented to Council to assist us in making our decision?
Okay, so Deloitte were engaged to look at the likely impact of the event, to look at previous attempts to avert, damage from events like that. So they looked at the Christmas Day storms. They looked at a number of other storms in other jurisdictions. They presented that advice to the Invest Gold Coast Board, and then off the back of that, they made some recommendations around what were the immediate things we should do as a city to respond to the likely impact. Now, what I would say, Councillor, is Deloitte did an outstanding job to turn that round in essentially 3 days because of how tight this was. The reason it's in a Mayoral Minute is because the Mayor is entitled to do a Mayoral Minute, but also this is about getting that money out as quickly as we possibly can. There is a real first mover advantage here, being the council, being the jurisdiction that moves quickly and responds. So that's why it's come in this form. I'm happy on a confidential basis to speak to the chair of Invest, and we can circulate that report. But it was a report for Invest, but I'm sure he'd be happy to circulate it without wanting to speak for him.
Okay. Thank you, CEO. Well, in closing the debate, I know that in time of recovery, I work closely with the Premier, and should this funding Mayoral Minute gets through, I think the opportunity of showing that we have skin in the game for our economic recovery, I believe that the state government will also come in support with us, and that's part of the first mover advantage. And so what you see before you will be leveraging now additional funding from the state government in different departments. That's the reason why it's a Mayoral Minute. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Division.
Mayor Tate, Councillor Young, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Curtis, Councillor Hemmel, Councillor Fowler, Councillor Gates, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Martin, Councillor Castro, Councillor Doran, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Marshall and Councillor O'Neill.
Against?
Councillor Patterson.
Carried, supermajority. Councillor, I move to the second Mayoral Minute. I move that Council acknowledge and thank the Honourable Rob Borbidge for his distinguished yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
but this Mayoral Minute contains a recommendation regarding Sahel Obedience, and I need to ask the Council if they would like me to declare that I received a donation from Sunland 10 and 11 years ago in 2014 and 2015, and I thank the City Solicitor for bringing that to my attention. I'm happy to make that declaration if necessary, but I'm just informing the meeting that it was $2,500 in 2014 and $2,500 in 2015.
Yeah, that's outside the required, right? No,
It's outside the relevant term,
no,
Mr.
it's
Mayor.
outside the relevant term. Councillors, if anyone wants Councillor Gates to do that, no.
Thanks,
I
Mr.
think
Mayor.
it's
Sorry
fine.
to interrupt.
It's good to raise abundance of cautions and
Thank
all that.
you.
Councillors, that Council acknowledged and thanked the Honourable Rob Borbidge for his distinguished service to the people of the Gold Coast and Queensland over many years, including his leadership of the experienced Gold Coast Board and his membership of the Invest Gold Coast Board. To that, noting Mr. Borbidge's recent resignation as the chairperson, Experienced Gold Coast, the following action be taken with respects to that vacancy. A, that Mr. Adam Tremlow, currently acting chairperson, be appointed as the chairperson of Experienced Gold Coast in accordance with Article 21A of the Constitution of Experienced Gold Coast. B, that noting Mr. Tremlow was previously the Deputy Chair of Experienced Gold Coast, Council advises the Experienced Gold Coast of its support for the appointment of Miss Louise Bazina as the Deputy Chairperson of Experience. 3, that the Constitution of Invest Gold Coast be amended to remove the requirement to have an ex officio director appointment from Experienced Gold Coast. 4, the subject to his consent to appointment as required by Section 201D of Corporation Act 2001, Mr. Sahel Obedian be appointed as a director on the board of Invest Gold Coast. 5, that Council confirms that the appointment of Mr. Obedian at 4 above is to be treated as exception to the usual director appointment process for Council's control entity, with all future director appointments continuing to be undertaken following an expression of interest process, including ordinary board vacancy created by Mr. Borbidge's resignation from Experience. 6, that to support the stability and development of Council's control entity board, all directors currently appointed by these boards, including the appointment at 4 above, be provided with a two-year extension to their current term of appointment. B, the extension at 5A above is to be considered as a one-off extension to all director terms, that the ordinary term for appointment of director to a control entity of Council is 4 years with a maximum of 2 years tenure on the board. 7, that the Chief Executive Officer undertake the necessary action, including the amendment of the Constitution of Council's control entities to give effect to the matters above. Question, Councillor Tozer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in 6B, I think we need to just make an addendum to say that it should be the extension at 6A above, as opposed to 5A. There's no such thing as 5A in the resolution.
Oh, right. You're right. Thank you.
And part 2 was, have we had any engagement, or has the CEO, through you to the CEO, have you had any engagement with these parties to gain their consent or their... Have we talked to them?
I've spoken to all relevant parties.
Great. So good. Thank you.
So there's no surprises on that. So I didn't want to... did that. Yes, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regard to number 4, do we require an appointment now for that board to have quorum or to be?
No, just that it's such a new board, and the more help and expertise in investment, a person with the experience in investment would absolutely help that board.
I certainly appreciate that. If I may, follow-up question. There was a fulsome process to identify appropriate candidates for that board. And I appreciate that it says that after this appointment we'd go back to that process, but would that process not have presented a short list of candidates? I don't have any concern about the person who's been presented here. I think that makes sense. But my concern is one of process. And we either have a process or we don't have a process. And so we're saying we'll stop the process now because things have changed, and then we'll go back to having process.
Okay.
I don't know whether we do need that right now.
Okay. I've attended Invest Board meetings from day one, and sit and listen, and the makeup of the board is very strong. The part where Sahel would add is another missing part in the a strong property development sector, and when you look at the people who was put aside, it didn't fulfil that sector. So I felt there's a hole there, and Sahel would absolutely fill that. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had two quick questions to clarify. Do you think that the Invest Gold Coast Board would not be affected by not having an experienced Gold Coast ex officio appointment, notwithstanding the CEO and the Mayor? Obviously, at a point of starting the board, that was decided that would be of value. So I just want to get your view on that.
Yeah.
And just one more question.
As I and the CEO said on both boards, there is a strong conduit between experience and invest, and with the chair of invest also on experience board, there's a third conduit there. So at this time, I think having someone who is stronger in property development than the current or the new chair of experience would be more valuable for Invest Board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to understand or get some clarity around the decision on point 6 to extend the board seats tenure. Could you give some background as to why that needs to be done as part of this Mayoral Minute?
Yeah. First up, the time going so quickly, and with brands happening, Invest, and also the tremendous amount of growth in tourism and events. I didn't want to. I wanted to give a certainty that that everyone's around for the next 2 years, all the players. It just makes it gives it certainty, and therefore give it confidence for all three board constituents, directors. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was just around the constitution for Brand Gold Coast. If we're feeling that we do have such a strong connection with yourself on the board for experience and invest, do we need to look at Brand Gold Coast, and is there that necessary? I think it's Clark Kirby is on Experience Gold Coast and he's the officio who's going over to Brand. Do we extend the constitution change to Brand, or do we feel like that's still valid to keep that in place?
Can we leave that for 6 months and I report back on that? If it needs tweaking, I'll be the first to bring to council to do that. Councillor Peter Young.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll draw your attention to item 16.1, which is a confidential item on today's agenda, a controlled entities director update, in which the objective is to seek to appoint a new director to Brand Gold Coast, and that requires us to recognise that this is in accordance with Section 201D of the Corporations Act 2001. So I'm asking, these recommendations, would this decision that we make be in accordance with that Corporations Act, please?
Yeah, it is.
It is, thank you. And I note that in the case of this document, this agenda, it's confidential, so nobody knows the possible appointee until we've made that decision, which is in contrast to what we're dealing with on the table at the moment. So I have a little bit of discomfort about that, I'll say, and I'll leave my questions at that. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologise, I should have asked this before, but it says on point 6, in relation to point A, that all directors currently appointed to these boards. Is that all three boards, or is that the two?
All three boards.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Peter Young.
Thank you. Because we're dealing with item 16.1 later, and that person would be appointed for a particular period of time, and is probably not captured by 6.B, or six at all. And I just wonder if somehow we might need to change the recommendation that we deal with later so it reflects. So there's a similar period of service. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor.
CEO.
I think we can reflect that in the later conversation, Councillor.
Well, Councillor, I put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? I'll call division. All in favour, show of hands.
Mayor Tate, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Curtis, Councillor Hemmel, Councillor Fowler, Councillor Gates, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Martin, Councillor Castro, Councillor Doran, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Marshall and Councillor O'Neill.
Against?
Councillor Young.
Carried supermajority. Councillor, I draw your attention to Mayoral Minute number 3, reschedule of timetable. Councillors, I move that Council resolve to reschedule the commencement time of the 856 Special Budget Committee on Thursday, 22nd of May from 9 a.m. starting time to 2 p.m. to facilitate my participation as the panellist at Brisbane 2032 host city event attended by International Olympic Committee's Brisbane 2032 Coordination Commission, IOC Senior Executive at 8:30 a.m. in Brisbane. I checked with the CEO to see if that that would fit all right with special budget moving forward, and it appears it's okay, unless someone's saying no, we want to go ahead. Okay, well then just letting you know I won't be here. That's all. All right, put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried, unanimous. Councillors, I draw your attention to Mayoral Minute number 4, tree audit. First up, I move that the Mayor write to the Honourable David Janeski, Treasurer, Minister for Energy and Minister for Home Ownership, seeking his support for collaboration between the City and Energex to conduct a full audit of vegetation in critical power infrastructure corridor across the city. 2, that subject the Minister's response, the CEO provide a report to a future special budget committee outline as a minimum the following matters. A, proposed scope of work to remove or maintain, and as necessary, high-risk vegetation in critical power infrastructure corridors. B, proposed scope of work for replacing vegetation earmarked for removal with other and more suitable vegetation. And C, necessary funding for conclusion in the 25-26 budget. Councillor Tozer.
Firstly, Mr. Mayor, this is a great initiative, and frankly, throughout the hinterland, there's been some real challenges with the complexity of outages that have been caused by trees quite often in that power corridor. My question's through you to the CEO. Just for the record, can we get some clarity on the responsibility of council and the responsibility of Energex when it comes to trees and power lines and the assets and how that works?
CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In simple terms, Councillor, we are obviously responsible for our trees on our land, but where they interact with Energex assets, we are required to seek their approval and their advice prior to moving on those assets. So we can. I'm just signalling my director to come in and make sure what I'm saying is correct. But in simple terms. We cannot move on a tree that is close to a power line without first seeking Energex advice and guidance. And I will defer, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor, to my director who's just made his way to the podium.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Effectively, Energex has responsibility for maintenance of trees under the power lines. So we cannot go and maintain and effectively remove trees which are directly under power lines within the defined corridor. Our accountability is effectively to ensure that plantings in and around that corridor are of a suitable species and type, and we collaborate with Energex around the removal and replacement of species. And we do have an MOU that was established last year that defines those relationships and those accountabilities between the two entities.
Follow that up. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I thought I was okay for a couple of questions, so sorry, Mr. Mayor. So just so clear, a couple of times both the CEO and you've used this word, the power corridor, and then when you've said trees underneath power lines, and it occurs to me the power corridor is actually quite a lot wider than just underneath the power lines. So I'm just trying to work out. The CEO's made some comments about council having a responsibility to remove some trees in council land, and then you've just said that it's entirely Energex responsibility. I'm very supportive of this initiative, working collaboratively with Energex, but I'm really trying to make sure that there can be clarity for the community about the work that council is obligated to do and the work that Energex is obligated to do before we set out on this collaborative program.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there's a defined zone, exclusion zone under the power lines, which is defined through a safety exclusion zone. So any trees located within that zone, Energex are accountable and will undertake those works. They will engage with the council on where they're removing trees. Our relationship is more about maintaining appropriate tree corridors, appropriate species to obviously minimise impact on power lines, and also if there are offset plantings. So they are quite clearly defined roles and accountabilities, and I see no confusion or uncertainty created through the Mayoral Minute.
Mayor, do you mind if I speak to it? Oh, of course.
I'll come back to you. Councillor.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's actually not a question. It was just some information.
Okay.
I'm very supportive of this approach, but I did want to highlight that after the 2023 storm, Council actually appointed a full-time officer to embark upon an inspection program. I understand, and I'm trusting my memory here, but I understand that 20,000 trees have been inspected so far, and as a result 800 have been already removed that were considered an inappropriate species for their location. In getting advice about moving forward, I was advised that the thorough audit will take until perhaps autumn of next year, or autumn of next year. So the work is underway, which is fantastic that the council has appointed someone to drive inspections of trees considered dangerous by residents or in their assessment. So it's a good move, and with this on top of it, very helpful to community.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Castro?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I have had an incident in Merrimack where a number of trees on private land had come down onto power lines, and this is the residents tell me, several residents, that this has happened several times before. I've actually inquired as to whether we can do anything in relation to requesting or demanding removal of trees on private property, and we're talking a lot of trees, a lot of big trees on a particular parcel of land. The advice I was given that is no, we can't do that, but I just wanted to see whether that was true, and if not, whether the state can do something, because it caused significant problems in Merrimack. Most Merrimack residents were without their power for 7 days. They were some of the last to come on, and a big chunk of those residents were affected by the power lines on this private property that came down on the power lines.
Director, you want to answer, or you can take it on notice, and it's up to you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of private property, the council cannot give direction for removal. Energex do have some powers to be able to prune, significantly prune and remove branches within that zone, but in essence of a longer term proactive relationship, that would be something that might be progressed through Energex through their area, not through council.
Councillor Young.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Still not clear to me exactly what the corridor means, and our responsibility is it fall 20 metres each side of the lines, or 30 metres, or is it just what's perceived to be falling distance, or is it just underneath the lines?
Yeah.
Definition for that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I will circulate that. It varies based on the lines, but I'll take that on notice and circulate that to councillors. But there are definitions of zones based on the types of lines and voltage.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, in your motion, it talks about a full audit of vegetation in critical power infrastructure corridors. How do we define what's critical, please?
By talking to Energex, and what's critical is that our power to our utilities, such as sewage pumps, and so the first audit is like, is there any trees that potentially can take out power lines and to stop power going to our sewage plantation pumps and station, and similar to water. So our critical infrastructure is really the first priority, and also to investigate the power outage of our hospitals. Is there was it caused by vegetation? And if it is, then we need to remedy it. They're the first instance of getting to and do, because such a big city, but critical infrastructure needs to survive the storm. So therefore, that we can still provide frontline services. Councillor Tozer.
Mr. Mayor, this is a great initiative, and it was really it was great to work with your team, your Chief of Staff, on some of the wording around here, and this Mayoral Minute, and particularly considering in the Saturday and Sunday just past, Division 9 had somewhere between 30 and 50% of all the outages in the city over those 2 days, and it was pretty sad for a lot of those guys who were some of the last people connected. But that being said, people who live in the hinterland are also very aware of the complexity, and it was described to me by an ex-lineman that the outages were a bit like someone kind of walking through a spider web and then trying to put the spider web back together. So this report will be really important. I did have just a further question that I hope that could be answered. For some time now, as a council, we've been talking about a review of the regulations that govern the removal of trees on private property nearby houses, and I wondered if that report was still pending, or whether there was a piece around the policy of tree removal, and whether the CEO maybe could take on notice some advice to councillors about that body of work that was being undertaken.
Okay, CEO, take that on notice.
Thank you.
Anyone speak against the motion? The last bit I want to really highlight is that those trees that we take down, that's critical, potentially disrupting our power lines, we will do offset tree planting, of course, but the species will be guided by our what do they call those people? Arborists. And so that we pick the species that's more appropriate than the ghost gums, and so it doesn't grow and grow and grow, and so that's where we're at. And okay, Councillor. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing this, and like you, I share the concern of the vulnerability of our electrical and telecommunications network across the city. It's just incredible that in 2025 we've got so many people without power. I don't see the trees as necessarily the victims here or the responsible party, and a lot of places Energex or other power providers could have put things underground, and it would have provided a guarantee that we don't have these kind of interruptions, and I think that's their primary responsibility. So I'm cautious about us just blazing away and removing hundreds of thousands of trees possibly, and I'm sure that's not your objective, and I'm happy that this is an audit and there'll be a further report and we can evaluate that. But I'm cautious about us just going in blazing trails where Energex has put power lines inappropriately. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Debate's closed. Councillor, I put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Division, and does it? No need. Motion carried, unanimous. Confirmation minutes. I'd like to move for receipt minutes. Thank you, Councillor Gates. Seconder, Councillor Young. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. Any correction of the minutes? No. Move for adoption. Councillor Gates. Seconder, Councillor Tozer. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. Next item, councillors, is Mayor's report. 20th February, Safety Suburb Forum. Key updates included progress on the Gold Coast Homelessness Action Plan, Housing Initiative, crime trends, and safety programs like graffiti prevention and camera network upgrades was updated to the committee, to the forum. On the 21st of February, we received the delivery of the Lyric Theatre. That also includes the model. What do they call that? Freudian slip, is it? There's a video that goes and tells you exactly different elements of the model, and it also includes the 400-seat techno box, rehearsal space. So what I'd ask, Mr. CEO, that video exception from when we have council meetings, when we use the screen outside, so there's no additional infrastructure, while someone in there waiting for meeting a councillor or officer, I'd like that video to run in the loop so that the explanation is really there for interested party. So there's no additional cost, it's already there. And then I go to Councillor Gates for Junior Council.
Well, there was one before that, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's just that I wasn't aware that I was going to play a part in this morning, and I just checked my diary just so that I didn't leave anything out that was important. And on the 25th of February, I met Mr. Mayor with Minister Andrew Powell. He held a regional tourism consultation workshop here at Hotter, and prior to that there was a meeting with Hotter over at the gallery, and we also did some media down on the beach to promote tourism in the city. So that was the first one. Then the Junior Council was appointed, the new Junior Council, which saw Aidan Yee from Somerset College appointed as our new Junior Mayor, and Oscar de Jersey from Hillcrest College as the Deputy Mayor. They'll be joined by, obviously, the students who form up the Junior Executive Committee, and it's just wonderful to see this well-loved program growing every year and new schools participating in really letting us know of the ideas of the youth for the future of our city. So that was a great day. I can't remember who attended, but I think Councillor Wilkinson was there, and Councillor Curtis and Councillor Tozer and Councillor Doran, thank you. But I know there were many others who accepted and obviously couldn't make it at the last minute, but thanks to those councillors who came along in support. The Gold Coast Sports Awards were held on the 28th of February at the Royal Pines, Mr. Mayor, and it was an interesting night because it didn't only honour our amazing athletes, but volunteers and many of the events that were held in the city as well. So we saw Kaylee McEwen named as the Gold Coast Athlete of the Year, and our ever favourite Curtis McGrath as the Parasport Athlete. Your sports award, Mr. Mayor, went to Jay Opataya, and on behalf of the city, I spoke and offered our appreciation to everyone, volunteers, events, everyone. It was a great night. On the 3rd of March, Mr. Mayor, there were 3 citizenship ceremonies, and we welcomed over 1,000 new Australians to those events, and we had great representation from federal member Angie Bell, and also I like to call him our own Cameron Caldwell. They both attended a couple of events that day, and Councillor Hamill attended every one. So it was great to see all those new Aussies. That was, the Titans launch was that night too, Mr Mayor, on the 3rd of March, and that was down at the Star and was a fantastic night welcoming in the new 2025 team. And then our local disaster management group meetings began, as did the Premier's Queensland Disaster Management Group meetings, which were on twice daily. So it was a very busy time, and everyone is well aware that the beaches were closed, the evacuation centres opened, and the officers of the Disaster and Emergency Management Unit did an amazing job with the flood mapping that was prepared and popped on the dashboard for everyone to see. So by the 7th of March, we had 155 kilometre per hour winds, widespread power outages, and over 60 road closures, which I recall the signals were out affecting 225 intersections, and a time for our city that was of great concern. But in the end, apart from the power outages and some trees, it wasn't as significant in terms of damage as our 2023 storm, but frightening for a very long time. So we saw the cancellation of Green Day, the PGA, the board riders. It was a time, I think it was the biggest events week in our city, and unfortunately we lost those events. And Mr Mayor, I think you were back on the 9th of March, and so I'll hand over to you for recovery.
Okay. I think the good thing we learned over the years that there's no daylight between response and recovery, and our recovery was stood up days before we actually said it's recovery time. So that for instance, the equipment to use to rectify our beach it's already been moved, so there's no travel time from the depot. We already identified where's the exit point and entry point. So the planning for the recovery was well in advance, and that as soon as the rain stopped, we were able to press the button and go. And with that, intermittently, we even though we're in recovery, we had a watchful eye and a briefing from Energex every day to know. People want to know when their power is going to come on. The innovation by Energex website, where they had a tab there to show that you hit the tab and you put your home address in. It gives you an estimate of when your house should come online, and most of the times right, and sometimes it gets extended due to weather circumstances. And of course, we get a visit from our Prime Minister and Treasurer and Senator Jenny McAllister, who's the disaster minister, and I welcome them because it's wonderful that they're there to moral support, and of course, while you're in moral mode, you push for funding, and so that's why they were smiling so much. The next bit is Alfred continued the intense rainfall, and what I want to see, the bird's eye view, that photo was taken from our helicopter of the Green Heart, and I think we need to have a closer look on the flood map on the Green Heart and revisit the master plan, because it might be that we have more water elements included in our Green Heart than before, because with water elements it means that the floodplain gets flooded with water, and then that water will flow away, and the water element is part of the master plan. That's the idea of it. We'll have to have a look. Not sure about that road going through the middle of connectivity. That I forgot what's that road called? Like Gilgo. I'm have to re-look at that because it's going to have to be a substantial road to stay. Either you do it right or you don't do it. So you and I need to talk about that with Councillor Doran.
Mr. Mayor, I'm really glad you said that because I've always felt that that was going to be incredibly difficult to build, given that it's so low-lying there. And as you say, this just proved it, but you're the best person to look at it, being an engineer. So,
and the benefit is if we spend so much money on it and it gets damaged, the gain on that is, you've got to evaluate. That's why I think we have to revisit the master plan for that part of it as well. All right, and as we move forward, of course, we went and had a look at the dam. I think it was 120% and was flowing maximum flow, and the design is really the work of the catchment area. And happy to report that the dam absolutely worked as per the design. That is, the water flows down, and the catchment absorb the water, and given time flows along the river out to the ocean. The only thing that would test us, if should there be a king tide and stops the flow, and I think we need to do the modelling there to see, right? So that's the part of it. The picture shown there, of course, the scarping, that's famous for that, but the equipment's already in there. We stockpile a lot of sand up in the northern part of our spit. Our drainage of the Broadwater through the pipe work comes out to the spit area, and we've been piling it up for the last 10 months. So therefore, to haul the sand, the truck only have to go to spit, gets loaded, come to Hickman, end of Hickman Street, which is north of Surfers Paradise, dump it there, and the trucks and the bulldozer pushes it down, and that's how we get the sand so quickly to our beaches. And the next bit on recovery that I set together with the Premier is that we have to get out and show. Oh, that's our opposition leader Peter Dutton. Anyway, we set together. The Premier ran his disaster management, the state disaster management from our centre one morning. But in that gave us the opportunity to talk about avoiding the economic disaster. That is, we have to get our city up and running and showcase it to New Zealand and all of Australia that we're ready for the Easter holiday in April. And we're both on the same page there. So I've gone out and really, I think the very next day, whether it's Today's Show or Sunrise or national radio, and to say that our beaches will be ready, and that and to start showing the footage of the recovery. As of yesterday, the beaches from Surfers Paradise to Coolangatta are open, 22 beaches. So I'm confident that I said that 80% of the beach will be open by Easter. Otherwise, I'll shout everybody a beer in all the pubs in our city. And but it's a safe bet. It sounds a bit gung-ho, but in the percentage, people never counted South Stradey, and I was going to throw that in to buffer up the 80%. But anyhow, the message cut through because everyone's talking about, oh, you're going to buy us all a beer. And yesterday, I said, well, we're getting close already, and the people I'd like to buy the beer for is our officers working restoring our beach, not just our beach, our hinterland. And I said to the CEO, I want to do a thank you event, whether it's a concert, barbecue, or something like that, and that's where our concentration on. I've passed the ball to CEO to work with experienced Gold Coast, and they'll come up with something there. And if not sure if amphitheatre is ready, but we'll do it somewhere, right?
We'll do it somewhere.
We'll do it somewhere. So, on a daily basis on recovery, I get briefing from our director infrastructure there, and I'm confident that we're ahead of schedule for this recovery. The other thing to take note is from the southern beach, from Burleigh downwards, happy to report that you know how we had in the past, I think the past 6-7 years, we've got the Dune Care, where we had volunteers and officers planting vegetation on the dune, the sand dune. And from the helicopter, I looked at the sand dune with the vegetation. It held. The sand did not wash away. That's why our southern beaches is protected and has recovered and was open as soon as we were able to make it, the entry and exit point safe. And so I'm so pleased that Mother Nature to protect our beach was excellent. The second point that I want to raise is the artificial reef that we invested in Palm Beach, and you know, we built the wave tank, including Palm Beach there, to go where should the artificial reef be built, what size pebbles or rocks should it be, etc. Palm Beach was protected. It was the most vulnerable beach we have in our city, and the artificial reef have absolutely took the energy away from the waves. By the time it's hit the Palm Beach, it was fine. So that was one tick for Palm Beach, even though when I was putting the plaque on commemorating the Palm Beach, I was yelled at and all that sort of stuff, waste of money and all that. Well, anyway, I think it's best to look at the result, and it's shown. As we're moving forward, now the most vulnerable beach is the Narrow Neck. So what we have now, long-term plan, we got the dredging machine, that boat that's coming to the Gold Coast, should be here probably this time next week, depending on the weather. What that does is the sand that's taken away from the beach is deposited just behind the surf, and the dredge can pump that up and spray it over onto our beach. In 2017, there's footage there that we used it, and it filled up our 50 kilometres of beach, and that should be here. I spoke with the Premier about that, and he said, well, let's get the work done. Who pay what portion, we'll sort it out. And so that will absolutely bring the rest of the sand from the ocean onto the beach very quickly. I would say I already asked our engineers to look at potentially putting more sand at Narrow Neck, and perhaps even look at a groin design, so that Narrow Neck, which is our next most, now is the most vulnerable point, that's protected, because if that Narrow Neck breaks and comes in through to the park there, and then it will flood Main Beach. So the work's being done there. I showed the Premier some ideas. He's up for it, and so we might have a groin out there that you can, in calm weather, you can walk out, and just like we do at Kiragroin, where we extended that, and it's worked. Well, in the helicopter, where you look at down south where the groins are, it's like two arms protecting the beach itself, and it's worked. So we'll have a look at that. Other than that, there's Murray Watt, our senator, who's was disaster but he's our voice, our connection to Labor government, and I'm showing him around. So as we moving ahead, councillors, I'm quietly confident that we'll get back to norm, and meaning that our that was on the ABC, and the reporter just found that that the lady had the same shirt that I have, so we thought it was quite funny. Anyhow, funny how things happen. Yes.
Just before you close off, can I just also express our appreciation? We received support from incredible areas during the week leading up to the crossing of the cyclone. And I don't think I even got to tell you, but the Governor-General phoned me. The Governor of Queensland phoned me. There was support from far and wide and offers of help from other mayors in locations that weren't so severely affected. So I just wanted to acknowledge that support that was so strong.
Thank you. That photos then, there is the announcement on Sunday? Saturday, with Minister Andrew Powell, that more commitment from the state funding. So in the back of my mind, we've got to have skin in the game. This is what it's about, advocating and to come up with flights that are very affordable. And I said in the comment that literally my phone, after that announcement, my phone came through. Jetstar was Sydney to Gold Coast was $60, and I said that it's dearer to catch a cab to Sydney Airport to get on the plane than actually fly on the plane to come to the Gold Coast. And that what it's about, to make sure that the aviation industry is online there, and the state managers there from Qantas and Virgin as well. So it's basically teamwork to make sure that we avoid the economic disaster. And the conclusion, I think it will go straight to, there's a video there, am I right? Yeah, let's just play the video. It might just captures everything. That's the ending I like, putting the flag down, and that beach is open. So last Thursday, Her Excellency, our Governor of Queensland, Janet Young, I showed her around. I took her to the beach as well, and I know that the Governor General will be coming this week. I think, don't know exactly date, but anyhow, she'll be here this week as well. I move that my mayor's report be welcome and noted. Second, Councillor Gates. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show hands. Against, motion carry unanimous. Item 7, clarification, nil. Business arising from minutes. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, with regard to agenda item 16.3 of the 852 council meeting, I take this opportunity to provide a formal apology. with respects to allegations 1 and 2 to the council officers, I apologise for a breach of councillor conduct. I commit and recommit to always treating council officers with courtesy and fairness. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Presentation. Got the photos ready? There you go. Look at that. I'm just taking my time.
Gosh, that's a long time ago.
I've allowed the camera crew to come in to report this momentous and historic occasion. And on the 14th of May, look at the guns. On the 14th of May 2012, Council elected a new Deputy Mayor. History shows Councillor Donna Gates was unanimously voted as the Deputy Mayor on that day. Gee, we look young then, eh? Now, we come together to thank Councillor Gates for her remarkable leadership and commitment to serving the city as Deputy Mayor. I had my office discreetly ask each councillor to give a one-word description of their view of Councillor Gates. I told them their description could remain anonymous, but in true Team Gold Coast style, no one asked for anonymity. Here's a few one-word responses. Loyal, tenacious, strategic, passionate, strength, inspirational, purposeful, invaluable, dedicated, unwavering, indomitable. I could add frivolous to the mix, but that's an inside joke. Before entering politics, I always believed that a true test of a leader, a true test of a person's leadership is how the kitchen functions when the chef is away. Through the 14 years, the kitchen here at Council has been running very well, and as large part of that has been through loyal guidance of our Councillor Gates. I know the times Councillor Gates has undertaken the role of acting mayor. She has managed matters in the chamber professionally and carried the workload of functions, media duties and correspondence at the same time. Incoming Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mark Hamill, has a big shoe to fill, but in this case, a small Prada shoe. I'm looking forward to seeing you wearing that. He will need to improve his dancing, as we know Councillor Gates likes to kick up a storm at many charity balls. She has supported over the years. I recall seeing her falling flat on her bottom at one of the balls. She also fell off the V8 event one year off the stage. I'm told that was something to do with the sponsorship of tequila. As Mayor, I put on the record my great appreciation to Councillor Gates for her passion and love for the city. Her counsel on matters will still be sought by myself going forward, as the wisdom of her advice has served the city very well since she was first elected. Councillors, I now, see what I mean? Councillors, I now move a vote of thanks for her 14 years as Deputy Mayor. Seconder, Councillor Mark Hamill. All in favour, show of hands. Against, carried. Could you note that Councillor Gates did not vote? Carried by a supermajority. And now we have a small gift for you. May I ask you to come up and receive it?
Can I just say a couple of words before I do that, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, okay.
It's just been the most amazing time for me, and I simply want to say thank you for the opportunity. It's been 13 years that has gone in a flash, and today makes me feel like I'm leaving, and I'm not. I'm actually staying. I think I'm really excited about the future of our city, and even though you can tell from some of those photos I've aged a little, I really look forward to being actively involved for as long as I have community support. And for me, it's always been about community, and I hope that in looking back, people understand just how much I've enjoyed the opportunity to be Deputy Mayor and to learn so much of people from other areas outside of my representation. And it's been a real honour, so thank you very much. Thanks to my colleagues too, and I'm a little emotional. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you all.
Well done, Donna. Thank you. Okay, item 10, conflict of interest declaration. I think it's nil. Okay. Item 11, we go to 11.1, planning and regulation. Councillor Hamill.
Mr Mayor, I move that the minutes of the 853rd Planning and Regulation Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 4th of March 2025, covered by recommendations 1 to 5, be received.
Second to Councillor Doran. All in favour, show of hands. Against, a motion carry. Councillor, any items you wish to deal separately? Councillor Hamill?
Mr Mayor, before I do the close, can I just make the quick point? I wanted to acknowledge Councillor Martin and the city officers in their handling of the Cameron Juice item that came to committee. While we haven't pulled it out today, I just thought it was important to acknowledge Councillor Martin and the city officers who did a fantastic job of dealing with that GBI and how they've dealt with the family, and that the family passed on their sincere thanks to the council and the city officers for how they'd handled that. So, Mr Mayor, with that, I'd move that all remaining recommendations be adopted.
Second, Councillor Doran. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carry unanimous. Thank you, Director. Governance, Administration and Finance, Councillor Patterson.
Mr Mayor, I move that the minutes of the 853 Governance, Administration and Finance Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 4th of March 2025, covered by recommendations 1 to 8, be received.
Second, Councillor Martin. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carry. Councillor, any items you wish to deal separately? Councillor Patterson.
Mr Mayor, I move that all recommendations be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Martin. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried unanimous. We go to Councillor Curtis, Water, Waste and Energy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the minutes of the 853 Water, Waste and Energy Committee meeting held on Friday the 14th of March, covered by recommendations 1 to 9, be received.
Seconder, Councillor Wilkinson. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to open item 7.2 and move the officer's recommendation.
Do I have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Young. Right, to speak on that.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wouldn't mind starting with a few questions for the CEO, if he could highlight the original intent and benefits of the governance structure of the board for the benefit of council. Thank you.
Rightio. Councillors, in that case, we'll go into close. Commercial confidence, am I right?
Yeah, it wasn't close.
Right. Seconder, Councillor Hamill. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. streaming on. Let all the protesters in. They're a bit late, eh? Okay. There's Councillor Curtis. You move the motion that is on the screen.
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Second, Councillor Hamill. Okay. I'll go to you to speak on the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, colleagues, for the robust discussion that we had in closed. I don't think it's lost on anyone in this room the critical importance of the ARC project moving forward for the city. It has benefits that span economics, environmental, the future industry of the Gold Coast, and it's critically important for the sustainability of our lifestyle here. So it was it's obviously very, very important that we set up our ARC governance structure in a way that propels us in a positive way forward. I'm very confident with the work that's gone into the recommendation that we have on the board that this is the best vehicle and way forward, and I encourage my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Speaking against or a foreshadow?
Mayor, I have a foreshadowed motion. I'm not sure if we want to put it on the screen. The committee recommendation, but with the change to A, which is the same. No, that's not it. So the committee recommendation, that's not the committee recommendation. So C is different in the committee recommendation. And B and C are different in the committee recommendation, actually.
Well, let's just change it there.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Okay, so I'll just speak to it, Mr Mayor. I know I can't. I'm just going to put it up. Sorry. Yeah.
Just want to get it right on the screen. I'll come to you. It's on the screen. Councillor Patterson, is that the foreshadow?
Yes, Mr Mayor, but I am happy to add the 3 to 4.
Hang on, is that an amended motion?
It is. Oh, it's now. You're asking me. You looked at me when you said that. I think it's an amendment, but it's. You could accept it as a foreshadow, Mr Mayor.
I suppose it is now. It wasn't before the original got changed.
It looks like an amended motion.
Yeah.
All right. So let's call this an amended motion, I think. And seconder, Councillor Gates, you can speak on your amended motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor. So it was a really valuable committee meeting, and the committee chose a recommendation to this council which was different to the officer's recommendation. There was a lot of questions and rigour around that. Any time that we establish a controlled entity, there is a change in transfer of power and decision making in this organisation. That is not something to take lightly. We see the value in it. We certainly see the value in it, but we want to make sure that we're getting that right. This committee, this recommendation, which is basically leans on the committee recommendation, is guided by governance. It's guided by a process where it is normal for, well, certainly that we'd like to see an elected rep or an independent as the chair of this controlled entity, and also that the chair of the related committee be present on that committee. That is consistent with process and practice in this council, as, for example, historically, consistently, the chair of governance is on the audit and risk committee, which reports to the chair of to the governance committee. So I think this is a big deal that we're taking on with the ARC. We do want to get it right, and I think that this protects a lot of those governance and gives assurance back to council that we are adding strength from an elected and independent perspective on there, and that there will be a great connection with our committee. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Point of order. Councillor Tozer.
The motion that Councillor Patterson has raised, the committee recommendation isn't represented on the screen, and we probably just need to get that right before we enter into debate. If you want the exact words that was moved at committee or adopted at committee, I've got it right here. If you want, does that help you?
That is my.
That's your motion.
Oh, so it's not the committee recommendation?
No. That's
So I'm just saying Councillor Patterson used the word committee recommendation.
No.
It's not that.
No,
So
that's not what. That's,
no. It's
yep.
it's.
I'm happy. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, no worries. Speaking against the amended motion, anyone? Against the amended motion, Councillor Tozer.
Mr. Mayor, at committee, I attended the Water and Waste Committee, even though I'm not a member, and I had strong convictions about this idea of independent chairmanship of these boards, particularly with such an important project. And I articulated those at committee and, talked to members, and we had some robust debate around it. But I feel really satisfied today that I came into the meeting today with an open mind about why the CEO and leadership team had recommended what they've recommended, and I think I've got a clearer picture now of the transition phase that we're going to go through with this committee and how it will transition to a new structure when an investment decision is made. I feel much more comfortable about what has been recommended and the information provided to the full council today. I don't think the amendment adds sufficient value for us to support it, and I think that right now the unique skills of the soon-to-be deputy mayor add some quite tangible value to this transition phase, and I think the amendment should fail, and we should go with the original motion. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, for the amendment, Councillor Gates.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. This art project is the most important project that we have ahead of us. And for me, I think it's been a great move to suggest you as the chair of that board of directors. You'll be in attendance, you have your engineering expertise, and you know what's needed in this space, because as your deputy until this point, I've watched your involvement and, in fact, your driving of this project so that we are at the front in terms of our waste management. So that's the first point. The second point is that I know better than anyone in this room of the time constraints that Councillor Hamill is going to have in the coming years. It cannot be underestimated the workload that he will have as the chair of the planning scheme assessment group and as deputy mayor and living right up in the north of the city, which makes travel time an issue as well. He's going to be a very, very busy representative. I see that there is great benefit in having the chair of our Water and Waste Committee as a member of this board, and I see great benefits in Councillor Hamill being on the Water and Waste Committee, because all the reports will come back there and we all recognise his expertise in the waste management field as well. I think it just makes far more sense for him not to be sitting around the board table, but to be doing the other things. And if you're going to be there, Mr. Mayor, there'll be things that crop up that he can't attend to. So it makes perfect sense for me for Councillor Curtis as the chair of the committee to collect all the information, bring it back to council. We're all going to be involved in the decision making around this project, and I think we get the best of both worlds by having Councillor Hamill available to represent you when you're at these board meetings, because we both know how busy it is, and I think that's a major benefit.
Okay, Councillor Hamill.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to lean into, and I do apologise, it's a little bit weird talking about myself in terms of a board appointment, but when you're appointing a board, you look at skill sets. That's what creating a good board looks like. You look at skill sets. And Mr. Mayor, if I was an elected official, I would probably be seeking to become an independent member of this board. I'd like to think that my background and skill set would probably be sought after. So I disagree with Councillor Gates on that. While, and this is not against the Chair of Water and Waste at all, if it's about the skill set on a board, then having people with industry experience and knowledge is fairly important. And while it was raised that it's more environmental at this stage, that experience goes well and truly into getting environmental approvals for projects like this in other places around the country. So I would definitely echo Councillor Tozer's comments that if it's about appointments based on skill sets to the board, then I think me being there is fairly important, and that my skill set would add advantage. To Councillor Gates' second point, Mr. Mayor, you sit on numerous boards. You sit on the Olympic board. You're the popular elected mayor of the city. You're the busiest out of all of us. I'm confident if you can make the time work and can make this work, then I will be able to make the time available for these board meetings as well, because it is the single biggest project in the city. It is in the middle of my division. It's in the middle of my industrial area. It is beyond critical for me to be all over it, and I would recommend councillors vote against the amendment and that we go back to the original recommendation, which brings you on as chair of the board, but includes the deputy mayor, which would be me, at those board meetings for at least the next 3 years.
Okay. Speaking for the amendment, anyone? Right, I'll go to Councillor Curtis to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So highlighting the point that what we are essentially arguing in this amendment is a change to point C, and that the two people that involves the swap out of the Chair of Water, Waste and Energy with the Deputy Mayor, both of whom are not supportive of the amendment. I just want to highlight that fact, and we'll go to the vote. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Debate's closed. To be clear, councillors, we're voting on the amended motion. All in favour of the amended motion, show of hands. Against? Motion lost. So the original motion becomes a motion. Do you want to speak on it further? Anyone want to speak against? Let's put it to the vote. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Let's call division. All in favour, show of hands. Division.
Mayor Tate, Councillor Young, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Curtis, Councillor Hemel, Councillor Fowler, Councillor Gates, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Martin, Councillor Lacastra, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Marshall, Councillor O'Neill.
Against?
Councillor Doran.
Motion carried. Super majority. Any other items you want to deal separately, Councillor Gates?
Mr. Mayor, I noticed that with regard to 7.3, there was information distributed outside the agenda item which mentioned Rocky Point mulching. It didn't form part of the agenda item or decision, but I felt that I needed to put before the council, because of that information, the fact that I had received historical donations from Rocky Point mulching, and to see whether it was well outside the relevant term, but I felt it necessary, since that information was distributed to all councillors, that I seek councillors' permission to be involved, or whether they would like me to.
It's outside the term. I don't think it's necessary really to.
Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Mayor.
thank you for bringing us to the attention. So, do we deal with 7.3? You'd like to move? Move, Councillor Curtis. Seconder, Councillor Tozer. You'd like to speak on it? No? I want to speak against? Put the motion to it. All in favour, show of hands. Against, carry unanimous. Councillor Patterson.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to take out item 6.3 to move the committee's recommendation.
6.3 moves. Seconder, Councillor Gates. Do you want to speak on it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this really is worth highlighting, and this is something close to my heart that I have been advocating for since before I was first elected in 2020. Bulk side collection, our new process, well, not so new now, we've had it for a few years, is clearly working really, really well. But we did have one gap, and that gap meant that we weren't meeting our obligation in community service to some of our ratepayers who are in gated communities or high rises. this recommendation that came from our officers now enables us to fill that gap. In some ways, it will enable bulk side pickup inside those places, and where that isn't possible, in other ways, we will be providing a rebate and support. So those ratepayers are making sure that they are receiving at least the same service, or if they need to go out privately, that they are getting refunded for that. So I thank the officers for their work. I know this wasn't easy to get to this stage because just even the time that it's taken for it, but I'm delighted to see this, and I know many of my residents will be too. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Speaking against anyone? Put the close. All right, we put the motion up. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried, unanimous. Any other items billed separately? Councillor Tozer.
Item 6.4, Mr Mayor, just to move the committee recommendation and make some clarifying comments.
6.4, moved, Councillor Tozer. Seconder. I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this matter was discussed at committee and it addressed some conflict between a major project for the city and a Mayoral Minute, which happened at the last council meeting, and it talked about the impact of the decision that council made as part of that Mayoral Minute to maintain all of our waste transfer stations open until the end of next year. Next financial year, this coming financial year. The challenge that we had was that there was a major project impacted by that. And an article, Mr Mayor, in the newspaper yesterday talked a little bit about some proposed costs. And the article quotes me in that, in it, and it talks about a vague cost of delaying the Merrimack West sewer treatment plant project. And some people have relayed to me that the implication in that article is that that I was somehow trying to put pressure on my colleagues to vote a particular way or otherwise. And I suppose I just wanted to rise today just to say very clearly that I am fully supportive of Councillor Castro's and Councillor Doran's, in particular, advocacy for the Merrimack waste transfer station, particularly the green waste pad, which was being impacted by the growth of that sewer augmentation project. That is quite a big project. It's about a $350 million project. In fact, even just over the last couple of days, I've had lots of engagement with Mr Owen, who heads up our waste team, and he has said the Merrimack green waste pad has been very, very busy. It's been incredibly busy. I know that Firth Park, which has got a temporary waste thing, has been very busy when it comes to green waste, and there's no doubt in my mind that the city needs to come up with a solution for the Merrimack area when it comes to disposing of green waste, and we will need to come up with a solution. This resolution talks about how important that project is, that green waste pad is. It will mean, it does acknowledge as part of the report that there will be a period of that not being available while we source a new location. So what we have currently will have to discontinue in February in order to make way for this larger project, this Merrimack West sewer treatment plant needs to expand. It needs to expand by February. It needs to start in February. It needs to move forward at that time. It can't be delayed. And the reason it can't be delayed is because that project serves Mermaid Beach and Merrimack and Robina and Wurrunggeri and a vast area. If we don't upgrade it now, the report and the information that was presented at committee indicated that this 24-year-old project or this 24-year-old asset is just unfortunately going to reach end of life sooner than it needs to. So I just want to make sure I clear that up in the public domain. Councillor Doran and Councillor Castro have very clearly been strong in their advocacy for the Merrimack green waste pad. It's very important this resolution acknowledges that good work, but there's no doubt that the council and the committee have recommended also that the sewer project has to go forward, and we don't want to have any cost or delay in service by delaying that project. And I know that Mr Vaughan, Mark Vaughan, who's head of the team that was managing that sewer project, has worked very hard to make sure he's provided adequate information to all councillors about how important that big project is and how also important it is to make sure we come up with an alternative solution for the green waste pad at Merrimack as well. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Speaking against the motion, do we want to close, Councillor Tozer? No. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against, to Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that all remaining recommendations be adopted.
Second, Councillor Wilkinson. All in favour, show of hands. Against, carry unanimous. Transport and Infrastructure, Councillor Taylor.
Excuse me.
Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the minutes of the 853rd Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting held on Friday the 14th of March 2025, covered by recommendations 1 to 9, be received.
Second, Councillor Gates. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. Councillors, any items you want to deal separately? Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move item 6.3, if I may, and speak to it.
6.3. Move, Councillor Gates. Second, Councillor Taylor.
And Mr Mayor, I wanted to thank the chair of the committee. This clashed with one of our meetings, disaster management meetings, so unfortunately I couldn't be at committee, but the chair moved a changed recommendation for me, which I'm very grateful to the committee for supporting. The Coomera Road Network study outcomes, Mr Mayor, have really identified the need for work around this. And this report was in response to a Mayoral Minute that you introduced. Again, when I was in Melbourne popping my mum into aged care, you took that lead and you introduced a Mayoral Minute so that the work surrounding the Coomera Road Network could be undertaken. And the officers have done a fantastic job of pointing out all that is necessary. And I think the changed recommendation put forward by Councillor Taylor on my behalf actually gets us moving with the state and federal government to get endorsement of some funding so that we can actually start work on what has now become a critical issue in Northern Gold Coast. And in 2 years ago, we had the traffic volume numbers on Foxwell Road, and it was 42,000 vehicles a day. And 2 years later, it's 50,000 vehicles a day. And it's just gridlock. We don't know what additional impacts there are going to be from the Coomera Connector arriving at Foxwell Road, from the hospital opening in 2 years, and from the potential development of up to 6,000 dwellings on the land just north of the Coomera Town Centre. So, Mr Mayor, this is really important, and it relies upon your advocacy to the state and federal government to identify some funding commitment for us. I thought that now was an ideal time to seek federal government support, especially since Mr Caldwell is the representative for that area and who really well knows the issues that are associated with it. And if an infrastructure agreement with the state can be established for us to deliver Road G, it will be a fantastic outcome. And for people who don't know what Road G is, it's been a long known road that will be delivered through the L estate and right through the heart of the town centre, that will just take the traffic away from Foxwell Road and onto this brand new road, and we need to build it. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone will speak against the motion? All right, I'll put the motion to you then. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried, unanimous. Any items you want to deal separately, Councillor Fowler?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 6.4, if I could move that and speak to it.
Move 6.4, seconder, Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So Helensvale Road, this was a general business item that I did raise last August. I have huge angst in my community about the potential need to upgrade Helensvale Road, and I would like to thank city officers for their hard work on this report. I've had lots of feedback from the community already on how robust the modelling is. I think we can clearly see that with the interchange for the Coomera Connector not happening on the state road, which is Hope Island Road, it is happening on Helensvale Road, which is a local road. And we've got huge issues with what that capacity looks like in the future. So the modelling gives me comfort, gives my residents comfort that we don't have a need to duplicate Helensvale Road in the next 10 years. What it does show is that we might not even have had the need to duplicate Helensvale Road if the Coomera Connector interchange wasn't being placed on that local road. What we can clearly see with the modelling, I have comfort that City Office will be looking at that modelling when it does open and see if the forecasts are correct, by 2041 we are going to need to duplicate Helensvale Road, particularly on that eastern and northern front. So the complexities of this upgrade are that on one side we have Ramsar internationally protected environmental wetlands, which have a huge ecological value, and on the other side of the road we have housing, residential housing, which we are not going to obviously repossess. So the design of the upgrade of Helensvale Road, whether this stays as a local road or whether we do advocate for the state to take this over as a state road, is complex and will take a lot of work into the future. So again, I would really like to thank City Officers. I know this was a lot of work to put into this report, but it certainly gives me comfort and the residents comfort that the City has eyes on this project. And I agree with City Officers that there is merit in talking to the state government about this becoming a state road. We are looking at one end being a state road, Hope Island Road. We're looking at the other end of Helensvale Road being the M1. So we then have state infrastructure being placed right on it. So it makes sense to have that conversation, and I look forward to the outcome.
Okay. Anyone speak against? Put the motion to you then. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried, unanimous. Any items to do separately? I'll go to Councillor Castro.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, it's item 8.1, and I just wanted to pull that out to actually move that recommendation, if I could, Mr. Mayor. Move.
Councillor Castro, seconder Councillor Tozer.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, just very briefly, firstly, I'd just like to thank Councillor Taylor for taking a rather late general business item on this one, and a wry smile from the CEO. But there's a in-joke there with... but Mr. Mayor, keeping everyone in anticipation now. So
nobody's laughing. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Councillor Taylor for doing that and moving this at committee. As of course I'm not a member of the committee, but I just wanted to move this today because it is something that, and it'd be interesting to know, but I feel that maybe a lot of other councillors have had representation from their communities about concerns of the growth of personal mobility devices in the city and the impacts that's having on the community. So I just wanted to call for this report. In the end, I think a lot of it sits with the state. I personally feel that we have some very loose and lax laws surrounding the use of personal mobility devices, and it'd be really good to get this report back so we can see what the state of play is. So,
okay. Anyone want to speak against the motion? Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against, carry, unanimous. Councillor Tozer.
Item 6.2 to move the committee recommendation, please.
6.2 moved. Seconder, Councillor Martin.
Mr. Mayor, e-bikes. There's little doubt that e-bikes have become quite a popular Christmas gift, and they're used by lots of young people, particularly in the hinterland. And I know that all over the city we've got some issues with e-bikes. And one of the things that happens when we try to take an enforcement approach to e-bikes is that members of the community who love their e-bikes saying, well, if only the council would provide a place for us to ride, we wouldn't need to ride illegally all the time. And I think that's rubbish, Mr. Mayor. Frankly, people should do the right thing whether or not there's facilities, and they should find facilities or ride on their private property instead of through our parks. But we have a very responsible organisation who's got some great association and some tenure in other locations, and they're called the Electric Moto Parks Australia Club Incorporated. They put a petition together of members, and they made what I would describe as almost an unsolicited approach for the use of a piece of council land. And the recommendation of the committee was to investigate, and don't get me wrong, there's still some work for Electric Moto Parks Australia Club to do, but we've identified a site. That site, Mr. Mayor, is only accessible through Division 9, but it's technically located in Division 13, in Councillor Martin's division. And it's been really great to collaborate with Councillor Martin on this project and work with the team from Electric Moto Parks Australia Club and come up with a solution. And now disused old petrol motorcycle park can be used for electric motorbikes, which are quite a lot quieter. They're used by lots of people just as mobility devices, but they're actually, this project has been something that's a bit of an innovative solution to utilise an old piece of land that we weren't using, and also make sure that we can come back to any person who says that there's nowhere to ride. We say, well, you know what, there is actually a place for you to ride, and it's right here. It's a centrally located site in the middle of the Gold Coast. Like I said, it's got M1 frontage, and it's really quite close to the urban centre. We're hoping that it will end up being a great asset, and whilst, like I said, there's lots of work to do for Electric Motorbikes Parks Australia Club to do before this comes to life, we're actually really bullish, very positive about the future, and hope that the next coming months can result in a really good outcome for people who like to ride their bikes, but also the community, and also making sure that we use a delinquent piece of land that hasn't been used for some time. And I just want to finalise it by saying the officers worked really hard. Jodie Pocock and her team worked really hard to come up with a great report that was really informative and helped us come up with this solution. And Councillor Martin and my office worked really closely to try to make sure that our broader communities were ultimately supportive, but there will still be a public notification phase where we'll be doing some more community consultation about the impact of nearby communities as well. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Speaking against? Mr. Mayor. Question? No, sir. Councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I supported this committee, and I still am of the mind to. I just had a question about the operation. I wonder if this is going to be like a club, like a BMX club might operate on a piece of land that's leased from council, or if it's more a business model whereby they're charging people to utilise the facilities. Through you, Mr. Mayor. If there's...
I can explain that. Councillor Tozer. So Electric Moto Parks Australia Club are an incorporated association, and so the best description is it's a lease to a community organisation that will have members permitted to ride. It hasn't been described as a business to me. However, my gut feeling and my expectation is, just like every community group, there'll be membership fees and possibly ride fees, and there might be a transitional phase for some people who might want to test it out and practice riding before they become members. So for all intents and purposes, I think it will work like most of our community leases for community groups. However, there might be elements of it that do look a little bit like a business, because there is a cost associated with managing a park and insurances, and we'll need to make sure that users of the park take out the appropriate insurance, either through the incorporated association or through some sort of waiver system, to make sure that the people who do ride there can be safe and it can actually be financially sustainable.
Director, if you can take that on notice as well, that question. Speaking against the motion, Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I struggle with this recommendation from officers, because my community is absolutely littered with folks who are illegally riding e-motorbikes throughout the area, on our roads, on our parks, on our shared paths. Councillor Tozer's general business item sits nicely against this one for me, because I'm really interested to hear about what's happening in the community with e-bikes and electronic bikes and hybrid bikes, because I feel from the experience in Division 11, Mr. Mayor, that the proliferation of these devices, which are state regulated, not council regulated, is placing the safety of pedestrians in my community at risk, and law-abiding bike riders. Now, this facility here, as I read it, and I read it prior to committee, seeks to almost reward the use of these bikes by giving them a club and a place to go. But the logic in that it would give a place for folks to go and ride, and therefore not ride illegally on our roads or on our shared paths at increased speeds, to me is a false narrative, because there is a club, there is a gated. It says in the report that it will be fenced for the obvious reasons that Councillor Tozer just outlined, which are understandable. So I don't think it's going to take any illegal e-motorbike user off our shared paths and off our roads. I think this is just a separate club for those who like electric bikes and want to ride them like a dirt bike, but for electric. And I don't think that we as a city should be encouraging this use until such time as we see a behaviour change where they respect our shared paths and our roads, and we start to see some acquiescence to the community that we have on the Gold Coast. And so, whilst I appreciate that a lot has gone into this, and there may be some benefits, which I accept, that Councillor Tozer outlined, I think that we still are living with the risks associated with these devices, and I think there's a lot of water to go under the bridge in relation to their regulation. And as of now, my view is that we shouldn't proceed with the committee recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Gates.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Doran's highlighted a concern that I also had about how these people are going to get to this facility. Are they going to ride their e-bikes?
They're going to ride there.
Well, correct, and that for me is a bit of a problem, because every day we see them on our pathways and on our roads as unregistered vehicles. I nearly got hit by one just the other morning here within the Chambers precinct, by one going in the opposite direction, and I've also been just missed on the Ocean Way, and I'm not an elderly or hearing impaired person, almost, but not quite. And so, I have a great concern about this as well. I just feel that they won't put their bikes in a vehicle and take them to this facility. They'll ride them there. And I agree with Councillor Doran that in doing so, their behaviour to date doesn't warrant reward.
All right, I take it down as speaking against, so I'm going for someone who's speaking for. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm definitely supportive of this motion. We've already spoken about a GB item and the concerns of these particular devices in our city. Look, I think we need to understand at the moment there's got to be a lot more regulation at state level to improve the safety, insurance and enforcement of these devices on the road. The GB item, which I'm not talking to at the moment, is asking, how do we manage these particular devices as a city moving forward with our infrastructure? But it also needs to ensure that state government are monitoring this situation and, in my view, make serious reform in this area. But what we do as a city is identify where there are users out there, and not everyone does the wrong thing. There are users that will do the right thing, no matter whether they're using a motorbike, whether they're using a go-kart, whether they're using a bike. There's a facility for someone to go to, and there's an organisation that's prepared to create this space. So we understand the concerns. We need state government to get stronger in this space. It's happening in all communities. It's happening in my community, and I'm sure it's happening to everyone's community. State government needs to step up, but this does give the opportunity for users of these devices to have a safe place to activate in that particular area, and that's the reason I hope everyone supports this motion.
Speaking against the motion, Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I am a mum of two boys with Sirons, so electric motorbikes, and so I have experience in this space. My children use private property and they go out to Gap Creek and they use it appropriately, and while they'll be very disappointed that I'm not voting for this motion today, my main issue for doing that is that in the community, and I'm just talking anecdotally from Division 2, the people who are misusing these are predominantly young people. They're using them as transportation. They're not using them or riding them to go to a dirt track. So when I say that, they're getting on them to go to their high school, they're riding around to get to their mate's place, they're driving around to get to their basketball courts. I don't see this as a solution to the bigger issue that we have in our communities. And as a mother with children with these devices, how am I going to get those electric motorbikes onto my vehicle and then down to this facility? So for that reason, I won't be supportive today.
For the motion, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supportive of this motion, and I obviously inherited the start of this project from my predecessor, Councillor McDonald, who had provided support, and I've since worked with Councillor Tozer and the operator around their proposal. I think there's a very clear distinction around electric bicycles and electric motocross bikes. Electric motocross bikes are totally illegal on our suburban roads, and they need a place to ride those. So, prior to this proposal, this park was an electric motocross track. I don't believe we had a proliferation of dirt bikes lining up, getting into the property. They were transported there, and then they had usage. And I expect it to work the same in that illegal motocross bikes, electric, are not riding to the venue, and I think that should be part of the mitigation. I would expect that the track would have some sort of process in play around that behaviour. This is not somewhere where you can ride your electric pedal
bike. We're talking jumps and things like that. And those electric motocross bikes, not legal on our roads. So I believe this will have an impact where we have a safe place that they can ride, and it allows us to work with the state. And I'm very supportive of Councillor Castro's proposal around the laws and enforcement and working with the state and the police and how they mitigate this. I think this is an extra tool because I've met with the local police around how they're engaging with kids. They've explained the issues around rocking up to a place and the kids scattering like cockroaches and causing risks to kids, escaping the police, puts everyone in a dangerous situation. So what they're doing is they're going to schools and they're educating. And so if this can be part of their arsenal to educate kids and say, well, there is a safe place, there's a legal place you can ride your Ciron or your electric motocross bike, which is never going to be legal on the street. This is just another benefit for the police to educate, and I think we should see how this works. And the other part I would say is this site is zoned sport and recreation. It had a motocross track on it, and Councillor Tozer might know the amount of years, but it is sat dormant and vacant. I think it's been used as a depot site. I can't think of a use that is going to be suitable for sport and rec. You know, it's not going to be a football field. So, I mean, if we don't have it for this purpose, what then would we use it for, sport and rec? And I do believe that when it was petrol-powered motorbikes, it was very popular, but the operators had some noise issues. With the advent of electric, I think that's going to mitigate some of those issues. So I think it will be a valuable asset to the community, and I think we could assess it how it goes and dovetail into Councillor Castro's report. So I'll be supporting it.
Okay, against the motion? I've got to ask for against. Anyone against? All right, Councillor Tozer, you want to yield your closing to Councillor O'Neill?
I don't really want to yield, Mr. Mayor, but you did have 2 againsts before in a row, Mr. Mayor, so maybe you could do 2.
I've done my numbers.
Just yield part of your time. I can speak against and then vote for. Just so
Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to. I would prefer not to yield my close. No.
Sorry?
I'd prefer not to yield my close.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Councillor O'Neill.
Councillor Tozer to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the debate's been interesting. There's definitely been some, for and against that has given even me food for thought. But I think the fundamental issue that we have here is this idea that, there's heaps of inconsistency between the community impact that councillors deal with every day and the state laws that govern some of the things that happen. There are state laws that really govern how electric bikes get used on our pathways, and that's really quite difficult. We don't have the local law enforcement that can hunt down young whippersnappers riding their bikes illegally. We just don't have the resources to be able to have a group of crack mercenaries trying to take that down. And so the variables that we have at our disposal are cultural change and behavioural change. And Councillor Doran touched on this idea of behaviour change, this idea of how do we help young people understand better how they can be better citizens and use their recreation activity in a way that's actually building the community, that doesn't impact the community negatively. And we can take a defeatist attitude about that and say, well, young kids are never going to change. We're never going to be able to solve this problem. And so we should do nothing for people who are doing illegal things and send them all to jail and send them tickets. But I don't always think that works, Mr. Mayor. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes taking a hard line when it comes to enforcement is really important. But frankly, this facility allows us to help educate young people who might be using bikes about this idea of how they are part of the community and how they behave inside this facility and outside this facility has an impact on each other. It also enables us to provide information directly to users of the devices that are causing the community impact. It also helps us leverage club culture to improve behaviour outside the club in a way that is not dissimilar to school pride. When someone in a particular type of school uniform acts inappropriately in a local park, the school can also come down on that student for behaving badly. When they're just, that idea of cultural identity is really important. And I think that this opportunity to partner with, Electric Moto Parks Australia Club gives us a real chance to add weight to the argument that we want our young people using these devices to act better, to be better in our community. Most importantly, Mr. Mayor, leases don't last forever. And it's been some time this place has been laying dormant. And I think once young people who are a member of this club really enjoy the club, if we're able to leverage the lease and the community group relationship that might happen with council in order to see improved behaviour, there's no better leverage than making sure you take away something that they love. And whilst I don't want to get into a tit-for-tat arrangement with the potential lessee, what I do want them to know is that they are on notice. Their expectation, were they to sign a lease with council and take over this land, they are on notice that if we don't see improvements in the community and how community behaves, that their members will be held to account for that behaviour in the context of the relationship we have with that group. That's important to us. We do want to see that behaviour improve. And frankly, I think this opportunity is definitely worth an experiment. It's important to notice that, note that in order to get to this property, you have to drive on Division 9 roads, and almost predominantly Division 9 roads. And I appreciate the impact will be greatest on my community than anyone else. But I think it's worth the risk. And frankly, I ask my councillors to support this, what I see as an important experiment. And hopefully we can see an improvement in electric motorbike or electric bike behaviour across the city by engaging with this good citizen, this citizen with a good experience and a commitment to helping people be better educated about how they ride. Hopefully we can see that improvement across the whole city once we support this resolution. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
The debate's closed, councillors. I'll put a motion to you.
Division.
Yeah, division's core. All in favour, show of hands.
Councillor Young, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Curtis, Councillor Hemel, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Martin, Councillor Castra, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Marshall, Councillor O'Neill.
Against?
Mayor Tate, Councillor Fowler, Councillor Gates, Councillor Doran.
So, motion carried. Mr. CEO, now that motion's carried, can you ensure that the tendering process or whatever it is needs to be done, that it's we dot the I's and cross the T on that?
As always, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other items to deal separately? Right, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the remaining recommendations be adopted.
Second, Councillor Gates. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. Item 12, consideration notice of motions nil. Councillor, item 13, question or notice. There's one from Councillor Doran. Mr. CEO, you take that on notice?
Yes.
Okay. Item 14, presentation of petition. Councillor Young.
Mr. Mayor, what was the actual question?
You can read it.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
You didn't read it?
No, it didn't appear on the screen.
Can you put that on the screen?
I appreciate it's in the agenda, but it says it response to the question regarding street sweeping program. So could it be clarified on the record?
Sure. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the opportunity because I'd like to also state this was submitted before Tropical Cyclone Alfred, and I know there's probably a bit of work to be done since then. So residents in my community say that they have noticed a drop in standards when it comes to street sweeping. Following inquiries with the city cleaning, city officers have written to me advising that the program cycle goal is every 8 to 12 weeks, but that currently they're not meeting that time frame. When does the CEO expect to return to the program cycle of sweeping every 8 to 12 weeks? Thank you.
Okay, taken on notice. Right, presentation, Councillor Young.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've got two petitions that I seek to be received and referred to the appropriate committees. First is I move a petition requesting council to address issues caused by the large bat colony within Fred Cass Family Park at Highland Park be received and referred to a committee for consideration and report.
Second, Councillor Gates. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against,
Thank
motion
you. That's
carried.
A large bat
Back
colony,
to
not a
Councillor
colony
Young.
of large bats. And the second one is a petition requesting I move that a petition requesting a stop sign at at the crossing of Martin and Ferry Street, Nerang be received and referred to committee for consideration and report.
Second to Councillor Gates.
And I'll note this matter has been investigated by traffic officers and refused a couple of times, but the petitioner believes this is worthy of investigation. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the petition requesting council review and address the parking and traffic issues in and around Heights Drive and Silver Maple Streets, Robina, be received and referred to a committee for consideration and report.
Okay, second to Councillor Gates. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carried. General business, nil. Other business, 16.1, control entities. Mr. CEO's in grey. So, someone happy to move the recommendation? Councillor, yeah, move. Councillor Tozer. Seconder, Councillor Gates. You got a question?
Just wanted to raise in closed session the point that I raised earlier.
We're not in close, but
Yes.
you want to go to close, is it?
I sought that, but
Yeah, the reason for it is
because the matter is deemed confidential for whatever reasons. Sorry. Commercial negotiation.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Move, Councillor Young. Any seconder?
Just a matter of a conflict.
Okay.
I don't want to disclose who's in the report, but is there a conflict that you need to make before we go to closed?
Oh, I think there is.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Good
I
on you,
don't know, but it occurs to me that you want to make
good
a
on you.
disclosure.
All right. Where is my thing there? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Tozer. Right, councillors, the conflict there, I perceive conflict of interest. I have a personal relationship with a person who expressed interest in the Brand Gold Coast board vacancy, Mr. Roland Evans. I've used Mr. Evans' Canford property services in real estate matters, and I've paid commercial rates for services provided. Name related party, Mr. Roland Evans, and using services, commercial rates. Okay, Mr. Evans has expressed interest in vacancy at the board. I am voluntarily deciding not to participate in making a decision about this matter and shall leave the room. Councillor Tozer.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the declaration, and sorry to prompt you as we did, but I think it's important that we are open and about these sort of things, open and transparent. Mr. Mayor, could you characterise your relationship with Mr. Evans when it comes? You've described it as a personal relationship, and then you've gone on to say that there was really just commercial engagement where you engaged him for services provided. So could you characterise your personal relationship with him?
I don't have to because I'm leaving the room now.
I'm sorry? Oh, you're leaving the room?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I misunderstood it
entirely. If you give me a minute, I'll be gone.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gates, could you chair, please?
I thought he was staying in the room. Sorry. My mistake, Mr. Mayor. I thought you said you were staying in the room.
No. I think I'll go and check the food.
Hey, Gatesy. Interclosed.
Okay, I think Councillor Young had moved us into closed. Was there a seconder? Please. Councillor Fowler, all in favour? And that is carried, so we are now And Councillor Fowler, would you like to move your motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. So basically, we've just had a robust conversation in closed. Not much can be divulged. We have created the entity brand Gold Coast, and we have some very talented board members on that board. What we've just discussed is the skill sets of a couple of the candidates that we thought would be great to add to that board. So very exciting times for that entity, and we look forward to what the future of brand brings in the months ahead.
Thank you. Oh, I did ask that that be moved. Councillor Fowler, seconded Councillor Young. Thank you. Sorry, we didn't do that in open. We did that in closed. So that is the changed recommendation. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favour of the motion? Otherwise, we'll take the vote. All in favour. Could we have a division, please? Oh, it's unanimous. Don't need one.
Councillor Tate did not vote.
Oh, the Mayor's not here. Yeah, we'll take a division and indicate the Mayor's absence. Thank you.
Councillor Gates, Councillor Young, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Curtis, Councillor Hemmel, Councillor Fowler, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Martin, Councillor Castro, Councillor Doran, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Marshall, Councillor O'Neill.
That is carried. Thanks, councillors. We'll move on to item 6.2. I've just been advised that the Mayor won't be coming back, so let's just whip through these last few items. So item 6.2, is there a presentation?
No, just questions.
There's
16.
16.2, I'm sorry. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Martin and then Councillor Tozer.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. Just a question on the recommendation. I noted there was a future report to be presented in 12 months, and I'm just wondering if officers could provide some information around the 12 months. It seems like a fair way down the track, given I think our current action plan is expired, and wondering if that could be expedited sooner than 12 months, noting that we're experiencing significant homelessness.
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Yes, that's certainly possible if that's one of the recommendations from Council for us to bring that report back earlier. We are conscious that there is some debate at the moment and discussions at a state level around what might need to happen around homelessness, particularly with the recent events over Cyclone Alfred across all of southeast Queensland. We know there has been some discussion, so we are watching that quite actively at the moment. And as set out in the report, the work that we have underway is continuing. This is not a step back. This is absolutely a commitment to keep moving forward. So if one of the recommendations or changes is for us to bring that report back sooner, absolutely happy to take that.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I would propose, if you're willing to amend that to 6 months, essentially, and if something changes in that period, that a report would come back to a council seeking extension.
Yes. Oh, seconded Councillor Young. Yes, thank you. Would you like a question?
Yes, thank you.
Certainly.
I have a question through you to the CEO, and it may result in requesting whether Councillor Martin would make a slight further amendment to that point. At the recent Safer Suburbs Forum, which is an excellent meeting, quarterly meeting, where we have representatives from Homelessness Connect, Justice, Police, there was a request for a consideration of whether the way we structure our homeless support, keeping it separate from our compliance, is the best way, or whether we should do that. When that happened, the mayor stated in the Safer Suburbs Forum that he would raise that operational matter with the CEO. I don't know whether that conversation, you probably haven't yet had a chance to do that given what's been going on. But through you, Councillor, Madam Acting Chair, to the CEO, could we include in that report in 6 months' time an assessment of the structure? Is that sufficient timing?
Okay, so a few things. Decisions around the structure are operational as per the Local Government Act and a matter for the CEO. And and any decision that I would make, or potential decision, choosing my words very carefully given our enterprise agreement, I just want to be very clear that I haven't made a decision to consider it, because if I had made a decision to consider it, I'd be required to consult with the unions and the staff. I'm more than happy to give an undertaking that I'm willing to consider considering it. But if I was to say right now that we are considering it, that would require me to have consulted.
It's like,
Welcome
yes,
to the world
Minister.
of our enterprise agreement. So to be very clear, I'm happy to give it some consideration. I'm happy for us to have a discussion about it. But any formal decision on whether or not we were going to change would require me to first consult with the staff. Believe it or not, that is the way I have to answer that question to be consistent with our enterprise agreement. And I can't be directed by council to do it either. If I was, that would kick off.
I appreciate that. So I think, given it was quite a significant thing in safer suburbs, given the Mayor said he was going to raise it there, and given we've got this here, I think it doesn't hurt for it to get in the recommendation somehow that there is a note of what the CEO says he's willing to do. Is there wording?
I'm advised that we can't. So
I'm just, I'm not saying to do it. I'm wondering, just based on what you said, is there a way, is there wording that would be comfortable for you for us to note it in this motion? Thank you.
look, I'd prefer not anyway. The Mayor's not here. Most of us were not at the meeting you speak of, and I'd prefer that we simply go with what's before us right now. And Councillor Tozer has a question.
So my question just relates to, it says it's going to be presented to council. Normally it would come, and the only reason that this is here today is because it was deferred from the LUR committee. So I'm just wondering whether it should be to the Lifestyle, Environment, Heritage and Resilience Committee as opposed to full council. I'm happy for it to come to full council if it's important enough, but my feeling is we are now, the committee...
Correct. I take your point. And
and in saying that as well, our schedule over the next 6 months is quite big. We have quite a heavy... And I wondered whether, the mover, because I'd hoped to move something, but I was hoping to just buy ourselves a bit more time, so before the end of the calendar year. It could be 6 months, but I don't think it makes any sense to have a report back in 6 months if the state government hasn't changed their view on these matters. And frankly, this is a state government activity and matter, and we really shouldn't continue to have reports coming back to council unless there's something changed in another level of government. And honestly, it's a resource deployment piece. Like the services are, we've got lots of work that we're doing, and we don't want to bring a RACWA report if there's nothing new.
Appreciate that.
Through you, Acting Mayor. So I think the intent would always be to bring it through committee. The fact that it wasn't written there was probably just a misstep. We can put it in if you like, but by virtue of coming back to the council, we would always assess the item and see whether it should go to committee first. But I'm happy for it to. Yeah.
How we do
on the 6
I'm happy
months.
The only reason it's in the agenda in other business today is because I asked specifically for it to be put in other business, having missed it in the LUR committee, which was cancelled.
Councillor Martin, would you like to include it? Go. Thank you.
And while I'm on my
and
feet,
Councillor Young?
why we do, the 6 months is fine from the city administration's point of view. If there's nothing very much to report, there won't be very much in the report.
Thanks, CEO. I'll go to Councillor Young.
Thanks, Chair. More than a year ago, it was indicated to me that services that were being provided to homeless people in Nerang by private agencies would be discontinued, and that council would assume that role and coordinate that facilitation through a community centre, as had been done at Labrador, and I'm still in the dark as to where that's at. And I'm happy for that to be taken on notice, but it'd be appreciated if we could get some response on that, either in that report or in the interim. Thanks.
The CEO has confirmed that he'll take that on notice, Councillor Young.
Will you accept me speaking about the motion at the moment?
Of course I will.
Thank you. I'm really proud of the fact that our city has not behaved like some other councils have in South East Queensland in the recent past, but especially during this very difficult time where we've seen people getting kicked out of campsites, kicked out of parks. And nobody likes homelessness, and most of all probably the people that are homeless. But our city's response, I think, was really appropriate during Alfred, in that we established collectively with private agencies the ability for homeless people to be located safely, securely, and have facilities provided for them, including those that had vehicles. And I think that's a great response. There is a lot of community sentiment in favour of supporting homeless people. I think we really need to be conscious of that all the time. In Nerang, for example, there are people that gather every week and they bring food, and I see all their social posts about, hey, I need this kind of ingredient or this to bake something and take it there. And they're really ingrained in that, and I think what we've shown in the recent past is a reflection of that community spirit, and that's great.
Thank you. And I do apologise, Councillor Martin. I think I yielded your opening to Councillor Young. Would you like to speak in favour of your motion?
Thank you, Acting Chair. That's totally fine. I suppose I'm seeking to move this item, and I know we jump straight into the motion because this matter is often described as complex, and it is complex. There's obviously the empathetic side around trying to get people out of homelessness, getting them on a pathway, not just shifting to down the street. We actually want to lift them up and get them out of that area. And I, like most, have had particularly troublesome issues around homelessness of ones that potentially fall off the wagon or are not seeking housing and have antisocial issues. So this whole range is a complex matter, and I note that we've got our homeless action plan that's expiring, so I'm just really keen to expedite that because we are writing to the state government asking them to accelerate housing. I think we should try and accelerate as well. It's really complex, so I just want to see that come back to the committee and council as soon as possible because in our community we certainly have some complex issues, so happy to move the item.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? If not, we'll take the vote. All in favour? And that is unanimous, carried. Now, councillors, because the Mayor's not coming back, I didn't bring my agenda. Will you excuse me for 2 minutes? I don't mind if we adjourn for 2 minutes, but I need to get my agenda for the next item. Will you bear with me while I grab it? Okay, thank you. To item number 16.3, and the reason I had to grab my agenda was because I wanted to actually speak to this one because this was a report that was generated by a general business item that I raised last year, and it's quite staggering to see the results of this report and that there's been a 42% increase in female participation in sport across our city over the last 3 years, and not just that increase but a continuing upward trend. And I know that we all experience the same difficulties with change rooms for our sporting clubs, and especially in regard to the sports that are highlighted within the report. I noted that the report indicates a shortfall of some 48 clubs requiring improvements to what's outlined as the universal design standards within the report. So my first question was that whilst understanding the varying needs of clubs, do we have a rough estimate of the cost of providing the universal design buildings for our clubs?
Madam Chair, we haven't actually done that detail of work on looking at how much each one would cost. We've just, for this report, we just assessed it and did a bit of an audit. The next stage would definitely be looking at what the cost would be.
So I was hopeful that the council would support an additional 3 as part of this recommendation, which simply says that additional funding for the delivery of universal design change rooms be considered as part of the 25-26 budget deliberations. Are you happy to second that? Thank you, councillors, because we only have $1 million a year budgeted towards this, and I think we have really dropped the ball in terms of supporting females in the sporting arena. Sorry?
Madam Chair, did you say drop the ball?
Yes, I did. Anyway, I'm really pleased if we can get support for that, and I'll go to questions and I'll stop hogging the floor. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. My question was through you and just to the team. I appreciate that they actually took some time, and I got a briefing on this actually prior before it coming to council today. And one of the things I was going to ask of the team to speak to perhaps was just in relation to this prioritisation criteria. For those clubs, for instance, that some of us perhaps as councillors have started to already try to support as far as their master planning or getting basically to a point of shovel readiness, with those clubs that are already indicative of being able to, not necessarily go through and construct a plan because they're actually at the point where they're ready to pull the trigger, they just need some funds. How do they get factored into this prioritisation matrix, if you could?
Through you, Acting Madam Chair.
Number 3.
As you all know, councillors, the criteria was based on participation, looking at the facility itself and then other considerations. And we looked at 48 clubs in that process, and 18 became as high priority as well. What we have sort of worked towards, this list will continue to be monitored. We do know that participation can increase or decrease at any time. We do know that the facility itself could get to a greater standard or less standard as time wears on. And then the other contributing factors, the third part of the criteria, is really where we look at funding from different levels of government or through state sporting organisations, and that can lift that up quite high in the prioritisation stage. So we will continue to monitor it and we'll continue to make sure we look at all those sports regularly and those clubs regularly to make sure we have the most up-to-date prioritisation list.
Councillor Patterson, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Acting Chair. A couple of years ago, I think it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, there was a strong push from the federal government to be providing funding specifically for this. Has that altered? I'm not hearing as much about it now. It was kind of even presented to the extent 3 to 4 years ago that it wasn't something that we at local government needed to consider quite so much because they were having these really specific grants and incentives for clubs to do that. Are we connecting into that? Does that still exist?
Through Acting Madam Chair, there is a number of grants at the moment, and one I can probably work through is the state government is working through their Activate strategy at the moment. That will trigger new grants. We don't know what the criteria for those grants will be or what their targeted area is. In regards to the federal one, I think that was probably in a past party, and I don't think that one now exists. Saying that, the Australian Sports Commission have a number of grants as well, and I know even with Football Australia, they've got a grant on the back of the Matildas last year, 2 years ago, coming here, and they've got a female sort of facility grant as well. So there is different avenues, but most of the time they last for 2 or 3 years, and then different priorities come in the need. But we are speaking to clubs regularly, and we are identifying those grants to those clubs as well.
Would anyone like me to include in the motion that council officers continue to pursue grant funding applications to assist in the delivery of facilities for females? Continue to pursue grant funding opportunities to assist in the delivery of, what are they called? I've lost my notes, they're over there. The name of Universal Design Change Rooms. Okay, so that's the number 4, which was moved by me and seconded by Councillor Lacastre. I don't need to open debate. Did anyone? Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair.
Love it, Councillor Doran, love it.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak for your motion here, Chair. I think that there's no doubt that the increase in participation in sport by women and girls is largely borne about by their ability to see them on TV. That the exposure that Matildas and cricket and a lot of other sport that is now free to air on our televisions has definitely filtered down into our communities. And a lot of the time when you're a youngster, male or female, looking to proceed in sport, you have trouble visualising what that looks like unless you can see it in your sports ovals and in your community. And so you can't emulate what you can't see a lot of the time. And I think that the increase in participation is something that we should definitely celebrate. And I think that this report reflects that growth and also that commitment as a city to make sure that our facilities are both available but also safe for women and girls, so that parents have the comfort that when they send the women and girls down to play sport, be it cricket or soccer, that they're also protected in that environment, which is such an important part of what we do. From a personal point of view, I saw the growth of women's cricket at the Gold Coast Dolphins, and it was a compounding factor. As soon as one got started, 2 got started, 3 got started, and it started to build upon itself. And I think that we as a city, wherever we can, should endorse and celebrate involvement in community sport, and our facilities should, wherever possible, subject to obviously funding constraints, reflect that particular environment and make it safe and at the best possible facilities that reflect such a great city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Young.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, good to see this report. I'm not particularly comfortable with the findings, and I'll explain why. At least 3 years ago, I identified the need to support female participation in AFL at Pacific Pines, and I invested some funds and made those available to the club so they could undertake a design process, which took a very long time, and only late last year they've come out with designs that seem very strong and achievable, and they provide for full integration of the females in the facility, because at the moment they share change rooms and it's really unworkable, it's really unhealthy altogether. So the new facility has been designed, has a cost of $2.45 million. The state government, through the last election, the the Member of Parliament for that area, Theodore, Mr. Mark Boothman, lobbied for and secured $1 million from the state government, which will be available for the project once the new budget is released by the state government this year. So that money's waiting. We've got plans that, and the club's not required to go through a development approval process because there is already an approval on the site for a club facility. So this is just an expansion, and therefore it doesn't trigger a DA or anything like that. So it's a project that can go ahead pretty much straight as soon as we get the money. A big concern of mine has been that the AFL have been pretty quiet about this, and I know that a couple of years ago when AFL at the national level secured an enormous amount of money for its broadcasting rights, just absolutely incredible amount of money, and the leader of the AFL at the time said, a lot of this money is going to be invested in female participation. So I think we really should be knocking on their door very hard, both AFL Queensland and AFL Australia, for them to contribute to that, to enable that participation, not just in my club or the club in my area, but across the city. So we're kind of ready to rock and roll on this. The Commonwealth Government's also been involved through the representation of Mr. Cameron Caldwell, who's known to us here. And so I think we've got a good capacity to push this forward. But in the ranking here, which I was never consulted about this, and not many of us were, I think it's listed as like the second category. And I'm anticipating that kind of looks like maybe in 15 years' time we might get around to supporting this in accordance with the adopted policy. So I have a bit of discomfort about that, and I'll keep rattling the cage to enable this project to go ahead. Other than that, I'm pleased to see this report. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Similarly, the member for Theodore offered $1 million to the Coomera Soccer Club as well. And, you know, that was the club that actually caused me to raise the general business item, because the girls were getting changed on the fields when the lights went out. I mean, we have to do something, and there's 18 very high priority projects that have been identified due to the numbers, the participants. Like, what was it, nearly 47,000 women are participating in club sport in our city. It's massive. Councillor Hamill.
Madam Deputy Mayor, I think you actually raised an excellent point, and Councillor Fowler's comments to the side. I think there was a lot of state MP candidates made a lot of promises. What would actually be more beneficial is, instead of making one-off promises all across the city, offer up a chunk of money to support a prioritised program. Stop making independent throws of money everywhere. Let the city put forward what our 5 and 10 year program looks like and how much we actually need to deliver it in a prioritised order, and it would make everyone's life a lot easier. Don't think they'll do it, but it would be handy if they did.
Well, we can try. Any other comments, councillors? If not, I'll put this one to the vote. All in favour? That is carried unanimously. And that concludes the agenda items. The CEO would just like to make a comment.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I did briefly mention to the Mayor that I would do this today. Today's the first council meeting since the ex-cyclone Alfred, and I think it is very important for me as CEO just to put on the public record how proud I am of the city administration. The response was amazing. I want to particularly point out the LDMC and their work, but also all of the outdoor workers who right now are working to clean up the city. I want to pay my huge thanks to the inside workers who are supporting all of those outside workers. We are a large employer inside the city, and the way the city handled the response, not just the immediate response, but also maintaining city operations across the city, was outstanding. So I wanted to thank each and every one of those workers who work for us and say a huge thank you on the public record. I also wanted, on behalf of the city administration, to thank the acting mayor, as she is right at this moment, and the mayor for the leadership they showed. I want to thank the partners who we worked with, from Energex to the telecommunication companies, of course to the SES, to police, fire and emergency, and all the work that they did on behalf of the city administration. And finally, I want to thank the elected officials here today for the constant feedback we received over the last 10 days and the way that we were able to work collaboratively together as the elected wing and the city administration. There will be a chance, of course, for formal thank yous later, but as I mentioned to Mr Mayor this morning, it is the first council meeting, so I thought it would be remiss of me not to say a huge thank you to everyone for what has been an extraordinary couple of weeks here on the Gold Coast.
Okay, and because I can, and because I'm sitting here, I was a little emotional earlier in the day when you farewelled me from the Deputy Mayor role, but I really sincerely thank you all for the incredible support that you've given me over the last 13 years. So, and I do wish the new regime all the very best, and as mentioned, I'll still be here doing whatever I can across the city. So thank you, and with that, I'll close the meeting.